Let's bring this meeting to, council meeting to order, and we will begin with the pledge of allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk will take the roll.
Mr. Sextro.
Here.
Ms. McDaniel. Here. Mr. Putoff.
Here.
Ms. Smiley Robertson.
Here.
Mr. Albrecht.
Here.
Mr. Burke.
Here.
There being a quorum present, the minutes have been previously distributed for the last meeting. Are there any additions, corrections, changes, or comments? May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Sextro.
Yes.
Mr. Burke.
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel. Yes. Mr. Putoff.
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson.
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht.
Yes.
I hereby stand, the minutes stand approved. We'll go to committee reports. Judiciary.
Mayor, last month, expenditures exceeded revenues for the second month in a row by about $174,000. Year-to-date, tax revenue is still ahead of last year by about $120,000. So we're right on track. One big reason why we were a little expenditures exceeded revenues, a big part of that was the 3 pay periods in March. So we always anticipate a couple a year, and so it's always going to be a little skewed for that reason. But everything else, always good on the finance side. Gorman Farm, the summer camp, they will run June 5th through the 11th. They are sold out. Field trips continue through May. There is this upcoming Sunday, the Trosset Wildflower Sanctuary Tea, if anybody's interested, and just normal activities at the farm. Everything's ramping up for spring. The recreation, again, normal spring activities, youth soccer, baseball, and this year, for the first time in many years, there is a softball team. So it's great to see the girls. There were enough girls interested to have a softball team. So they've all started. You see the kids out on the field, and I always enjoy this time of year. See the kids in the soccer
Spring
and
is
baseball.
sprung.
I enjoy that.
Back there tonight, looking out the window.
Yep. And Service Department, just another reminder, Shred Day is April 22nd, so another week and a half. So time to get everything together. Alta Fiber, I'm sure everybody by now has seen the trucks. They're running the new Optics through the village. And just be patient. Hopefully they're not going to be here that much longer, but they're just tearing up everybody's yard. So, for those who have not noticed, also the pickleball courts, the contractor has begun work, and they've torn out the old tennis wall and that whole area. So hopefully the pickleball courts will be in soon. The swimming pool lights are scheduled to be shipped this week. I don't know if they're in yet. Still not in yet, but hopefully those will be up before swim season. And that's about it for service. That's all, Mayor.
Okay, any questions, comments? Carol.
Okay. Let me first start with fire and say that we all received an email about receiving a We Thrive grant to fund 3 outdoor AED stations to be located here on village grounds. There's been a change since the email, which said it would be near the 2 shelter houses. The locations are the enclosed shelter house, the bell tower pavilion, and near the tennis ball pickleball courts. Memorial, I keep saying pavilion. Memorial, bell tower memorial.
So it's right in between the two.
Yes.
Is that more central that way? And
Yes, yes.
Let me ask you a question. How difficult are these to learn to use? Can they be, anybody learn to use them very quickly?
they talk you through it.
They talk you through it, they give you instructions. As soon as you open it up, it talks to
Okay.
you and tells you exactly what to do.
Okay. And I want to echo what was in the email. Our thanks to Peter Levis and David Stark for writing this grant proposal that is going to provide these life-saving products for the visitors and residents to our campus. So thank you for that. Also, that the new employees that we have, one is actually operational in the department, the other will be before the end of the month, so that's where we stand on that. And I want to speak to, and this applies to actually both fire and then I'll bridge into the police, given the recent death of one of the officers in Springfield Township, our fire department as well as our police department have provided services to Springfield Township, be it, providing our backup medic unit or covering shifts and other items. And our thanks to the members of both of those departments who have supported another department during this difficult time. So, moving on to the police, one of our residents had raised a concern about our flock cameras, not the cameras themselves, but what our policy is relative to the data that is collected about that. The concerns were over data privacy and how that data could possibly be used by other organizations, not our police department, and what our policies were to protect those. We had a very good discussion on that, and let me say we haven't finished the discussion on that, but I thought I would share that with people that we appreciate the fact that he came forward with these concerns. Our policy is not yet in place because we wanted to make sure that we have it correct, but we do have a procedure that covers that only law enforcement has access to the actual data there. So I just wanted to make everyone aware, and, again, we had a very good discussion. We approached it more from the perspective of the use of police technology helping us in solving, investigation and ongoing, criminal activities. This concern is more about, residents, or if you extend beyond the community, anyone who comes into the village, and to the extent to which their license plate can be used, and what is involved in that. So again, I do want to emphasize a point that flock cameras only track the license plate itself, and that we're looking and aware of this issue and will consider it in the policy. Make sure that the eventual policy that is published on the flock cameras does address this particular concern. And now, have I confused? I'm looking at faces of correct.
Well, I have a question. Do they share an example of exactly what they're concerned with beyond just, improper use, but?
Well, there's a concern with data that once you have access to it, how much of that gets you, how much you go beyond just that data to access other personal information about you and how it can be used. And if you go kind of broader, can somebody request either via public information to get access to that data when they've not done anything that should put them under the scrutiny of any other organization or government agency? So the question is, what safeguards do we have in place? What access there is to that, to that data, and what it was going to be used for. So just wanted to say that our policy, it is an intention of our policy to address this area. The chief was working on it, but there is a procedure in place that limits that access to that information. Any other questions? Okay. We've talked about for a while the increase in mental health runs, and Chief Holloway had talked to us about trying to find a social worker who could help us with this, given the increase? Well, in fact, there is no part-time social worker available for that. So the department has taken a different approach and has identified Tina McCormick as the officer to be in charge of mental health areas for the department and gaining whatever kind of expertise can be done from a police officer perspective to help with that. And we had a couple of cruisers involved in an accident. One, we were assisting another department, and that cruiser got totaled. We were fortunate, or Chief was fortunate, to have contacted McCluskey Chevrolet, who had a Tahoe available, and we went and got it last week. And we had already had the funds set aside to purchase a cruiser, so all good things come together at some point, and it did for us in terms of the cruiser.
And no one was hurt.
No one was hurt, excuse me. Yeah, I meant to mention that. No one was hurt. Then moving on to building and zoning, we have an ordinance before us for appointments to the Planning Commission. The permanent structure for acres was approved. The Park Hill Monument sign was approved. And from a code enforcement perspective, the Sport and Drive Business Park is showing some signs of improvement given the violations that were issued from a zoning code standpoint. And then cultural arts. First, I want to mention that there was a Tri-County Players event scheduled for next weekend, I believe. It has been canceled. And that announcement went out late this afternoon, so you may not have seen that. Also,
Friday the 21st, right?
yes, it was scheduled for Friday the 21st. Excuse me, Playhouse in the Park.
Tri-County players.
Okay. Also, bourbon tasting is scheduled for the 28th of this month at 6:30. It's a Kentucky Derby theme, and there are still places available for that. Also, the Fine Arts exhibit will be May 5th through 8th, and it will be in the Flex Room in the Rec Center. And I think that's our report.
Any questions, comments? I have just a couple of things. In addition to the grant for the AEDs, we are going to have an ordinance on tonight to give, to pay $20,000 to Trails of Cincinnati or something like that for the asset report over on the Mill Creek, or on Sharon Creek. And our great grant writer, Michelle Gottlieb, was able to secure $7,500 toward that $20,000 grant. So it's only going to cost us about $1,250. She is a real asset to this community, I'll tell you. I understand she's just retired, so maybe we'll use her even more. I will remind you of council meeting is next, on the 18th. We have a special council meeting at 7 o'clock. And we'll have at least one thing in the water management report if it's ready by then. I also wanted to bring up, we briefly mentioned it, I think, last week, the question of whether we should go down the path and allow Zoom voting of council. It has now been authorized by the Ohio General Assembly, am I correct? Kathy, you can maybe bring us up to date on this.
I'm not sure what the latest is on it. Last I had heard, it is not permanently permitted.
Oh,
But if there is a recent development, I haven't heard of that one yet.
I thought Cincinnati did it.
They did, that if you have an amendment to your charter, then you are able to do that regardless of what the state legislature sanctions.
So we would have to amend our charter too.
Yes.
So I think it's a subject of discussion, whether people on council feel that we should allow Zoom voting. And we'd have to put a charter amendment on for this fall on the ballot, whether we should ask the people to approve that or not. I think that in some circumstances, it would be a good thing to have available to us, just in case somebody could be ill or have a problem at home. And Councilman Albrecht brought up before that the courts have gone to quite a bit of Zoom meetings now, and it's becoming the thing to do today. So, what's your general feeling of that, folks?
Mayor, a couple of thoughts. One is, should we wait at least another month or two to confirm where the state is so we don't have to do a charter amendment if the state authorizes it? Or are you saying, Kathy, we'd still have to do it even if the state authorizes it?
Yeah, you would not if the state allowed it, although I haven't heard anything. They had considered permanently changing that to allow for it months ago, but I have not heard anything.
So do we give it a couple more months before we go down? And if we are going to do a charter amendment, we're about time for the Charter Review Committee, which we're supposed to do every 5 years. It's coming up that if we're going to do it on this topic, we might as well review I can't think of any other matters that would be ripe for it, but I think it would be appropriate that if we're going to do it, we have it on one election and we're not doing one in another year or so.
I would just leave enough time that we have time to not put it through as an emergency ordinance for multiple months of
Yeah.
discussion before we do it.
I would say we should have it approved by the July and certainly the August council meeting. That'd give us enough time to.
Can you just get us, Kathy, the status of where they are?
Well, but I mean.
As far as the state goes?
Yeah.
Last I had heard, there
Not
has
going
not been
anywhere
any
right
more
now?
movement after
Okay.
COVID quieted down, and there was a little bit of an urging at that time they make it permanent, and then last I had heard, nothing else had happened.
But still in all, as a charter community, we can change the charter to allow voting by Zoom. So I think the question is still open, whether we should do that or not, because I happen to think it'd be a good thing to have in the.
I like the idea of being able to do it, but if we don't have to do it, then, but if we are going to do it, my only point was, let's do the charter review and address any other matters that should be presented to the electorate, for, the charter review or charter amendment.
Okay.
I guess I would like to approach it kind of from the other perspective versus us driving, whether or not it's a Zoom meeting, have the Charter Review Committee, and, call one together to discuss it and see what their recommendation is.
The Charter Review Committee will be members of council. That's who we've always done. At least that's the last time I can remember it being done.
No, I was on the Charter Review Commission before I was ever on council.
Well, the last time we did amendments was right after I became mayor, and we put in several changes to our charter at that time. One of them was.
Yeah, we're overdue, but I believe Carolyn, it's typically represented a couple on council, but then a couple residents.
I don't mind using residents. It's so darn hard to get our residents to volunteer the time to do it. We can't even get residents to serve on our committees right now. It is really, really difficult.
Yeah, but this is not an ongoing committee thing. It's a kind of once in a in the short term for a period of time. It may be worthwhile to get somebody like Dave Harwood or some legal background or whatever. But and has the experience and knowledge.
All right. I'll try to get a charter review committee then, together for next council meeting. Okay? All right.
Maybe we could help you with that, Mayor, maybe come up with
Yeah.
some other folks to
And
recommend.
we want responsible people. We don't want any.
I think Mr. Burke raises a, good option in that there are several former council members. Mr. Harwood being one, but not the only, that would be likely candidates. They're familiar with the process, they understand it, may want to stick their toe back in the arena for at least a short period of time.
Okay.
Especially if they're still residents. They have a passion for the village.
Yep.
All right, we'll see what happens. We'll get a charter review committee recommendations by next council meeting. That's all I have. Any questions, comments? Okay, then let's go to the ordinances. The first ordinance on the agenda is 23-15, and I need a motion to read it by title only.
So moved?
Second.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniels? Yes. Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
An ordinance designating J.P. Morgan Chase Bank as depository for active/interim funds and Red Tree Investments/U.S. Bank/Star Ohio is a depository for inactive/interim funds for the Village of Evendale for the period of 5 years from June 1st, 2024, and ending on May 30th, 2029, and authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract and declaring it as an emergency. This is we have to do this every 5 years. I believe they allow, the J.P. Morgan Chase Bank is our depository bank now. I think the law permits us to extend them for 5 years. Am I correct, Madam Treasurer? Extend them for 5 years. And that's what we're proposing here. I can tell you that the treasurer, the chief fiscal officer, advises me that it is really difficult to change banks. And we're very happy with the way they're handling things.
And their rates are very favorable.
Please?
And their rates are very favorable.
Very favorable. They're charging the same rates that they did at the beginning of the first 5 years. And that was very good. Okay, may I have a motion to suspend the second and third reading of the ordinance?
So moved?
Second.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniels? Yes.
May I now have a motion to add the emergency clause to the ordinance?
So moved. Second.
Is that Mr. Sextro? Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniels? Yes. Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Now we need a motion to adopt the ordinance as an emergency.
So moved?
Second.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht? Ms.
Yes.
Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniels? Yes.
I now declare ordinance 23-15 adopted as an emergency. Next, we have ordinance 23-22, and I need permission to read it by title only.
So moved.
Second?
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniels? Yes. Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
An ordinance approving a transfer from the contingency fund to the Gorman Heritage Farm Fund and approving an additional appropriation to the Gorman Farm Capital Account and declaring it as an emergency. They are in urgent need of a tractor and a pickup truck. May I have a motion to suspend the second and third reading of the ordinance?
So moved. Second.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniels? Yes. Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
May I have a motion to adopt the emergency clause of the ordinance?
So moved?
Second.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniels? Yes.
Now may I have a motion to adopt the ordinance as an emergency?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniels? Yes. Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
I now declare ordinance 23-22 adopted as an emergency. Next is ordinance 23-23, and I'd like to read it, permission to read it by title only.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniels? Yes.
An ordinance authorizing mayor to enter into contract with the lowest and best bidder for the 2023 street improvement project and declaring it as an emergency. May I have a motion to suspend the second and third reading of the ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel? Yes. Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Now may I have a motion to adopt the emergency clause of the ordinance?
So moved.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniels? Yes. Mr. Burke? I'm sorry, Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Now may we have a motion to adopt the ordinance as an emergency?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel? Yes. Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
I now declare ordinance 23-23 adopted as an emergency. Next, we have ordinance 23-24. I need permission to read it by title only.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel? Yes. Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
An ordinance approving a transfer from the contingent fund to the Community Environment Department and declaring it as an emergency. This is the fund for the strategic plan for the
Tri-State Trails.
Mill Creek. I need a motion to suspend the second and third reading of the ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel? Yes. Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Now a motion to adopt the emergency clause of the ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel? Yes. Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Now a motion to adopt the ordinance as an emergency.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel? Yes. 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 Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
I now declare ordinance 23-24 adopted as an emergency. Next is ordinance 23-25. Need permission to read it by title only.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniels? Yes. Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
An ordinance making appointments to various boards and commissions in the village of Evendale and declaring it as an emergency. I need a motion to suspend the second and third reading of the ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniels? Yes. Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Now I need a motion to adopt the emergency clause of the ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel? Yes. Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Now a motion to adopt the ordinance as an emergency.
So moved. Second.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniels? Yes. Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
I now declare ordinance 23-25 adopted as an emergency. Is there any other business to come before council this evening? May I have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel? Yes. Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Adjourn.